I've been asked a couple of times when the video for blue dials is coming. In truth, I've tried to script this video for quite some time, but the issue is there are just so many blue watches, seemingly more than any other dial colour from my searching experience. I've just found it impossible to keep the list to 10 models, and I've been wasting an inordinate amount of time trying to whittle down a top 10. So, as you can see from the title of the video, I've decided to split the list up. And this section is going to focus on light blue watch dials only. Well, kind of. The rule set I'm going to follow for this video is as follows. Number 1, the dial must be light blue. I will say that I'm using my own judgment as to what I consider to be light blue. The second video is going to be called dark blue, so I guess there is a middle ground and a cut-off point, and I have to decide where I'm going to draw the line between them. Number 2, the watch in question must be available for less than $1,000. And finally, number 3, each brand can only feature once for the sake of variety. With all that said, let's get into the video. Sadly, the Series 8 880 GMT is well north of the $1,000 price point. It's a really special dial that puts me in mind of looking at the sky from under the water. It's also a brand new model, but I'm going to keep my eyes on it to see if it ever appears in sales. However, we're focusing on the Tsuyosa, which is worth a look because the price keeps coming down and down. The release of the small seconds model has had a knock-on effect on the original, and you can now pick them up brand new for well below the recommended retail price. While I don't think the basic Tsuyosa is a perfect watch, we are here to discuss dials, and in that respect I think it's incredible value for money. Yes, it's a bit of a late addition to jumping on the Tiffany blue bandwagon, but that doesn't make it a bad choice. The colour is fantastic and the sunburst effect is done really well. The only thing I would have preferred is an applied logo rather than a printed one in terms of the dial. If sunburst isn't your thing, there's actually a gradient dial variant with a light blue dial fading into black. If you like the watch but want an upgrade, there's also the titanium turquoise, which has you covered and is a watch that I quietly have my eye on. When I first saw this range of watches, I incorrectly assumed from a distance that they must be new coloured variants of the full metal GMB 2100 range. It was only when I noticed the lower asking price that I realised actually they aren't the same. The band design here is simplified, no longer bearing the Rivet S design on either side of the bracelet. The profile of the watch is also 1mm thinner and the watch itself is 19 grams lighter. I'm always a fan of smaller watches, but I don't know if this is actually enough to be a tactile difference. The 2110 range doesn't have the same solar and Bluetooth functionality of its big brother either, but I think this might be my new pick for the most attractive G-Shock model currently in production. And I've got to be honest, I'm doing everything in my power to try and avoid impulsively ordering one, while I hope and pray they make an even smaller full metal variant. I'm going to just flat out feature two models from the same range here, because I think the proportions of this watch are fantastic. 39mm diameter, 44mm lug to lug, and only 10.5mm thick if you exclude the domed sapphire crystal. If I had to pick between these two models that I've listed, I would probably go for the teal variant, as I love that all-white bezel. But the ocean blue has a lighter dial, so I felt it only right to put it on this list. The Horizons range, like many ZELOS models, boasts a fantastic textured dial featuring radial striations covered in a gradient from light to dark. The applied logo, indices and date window at 6 o'clock really add to the illusion of depth created by the dial. A fantastic pair of watches and deserving for the recommendation of this video, but I'm not going to award it here, and the reason is actually getting hold of them is way too difficult. I've brought this up before, but the ZELOS website is actually pretty depressing as everything sells out so fast. technically the watch is light blue and the dial is just a digital display. I get that, but if I apply that logic, I'd never be able to feature any digital watches on my dial lists. So here is one, a really expensive one, but something completely unlike any digital watch you've seen before. Of course, you could buy a Casio that does the same thing for a fraction of the price, and it is quite difficult to justify a digital watch like this as a premium item. I understand all that. My counterpoint to it is quite simple. It looks really cool. While the stated inspiration for this model is endurance racing from the 80s, I think that's nonsense. To me, the first thing I thought of was the Vipers launching from Battlestar Galactica. It's got a real 80s sci-fi vibe to it. If you told me it had been commissioned as a film piece, I would have unquestioningly believed you. The Unity range of watches fully commits to their colourway, and that is definitely true of the Topaz Blue. If you love this colour, you're getting a lot of it here, with the bezel colour matching the dial. Now obviously that means that the bezel is purely decorative, but it is quite the decoration in fairness. If I use the term radial striations to describe the dial, as I did with the ZELOS previously, I don't think that quite does this dial justice. The grooves are not uniform, starting and stopping randomly. I'm not quite sure why, but it puts me in mind of a side view of the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. I love the choice of colour here. I think it's spot on, and the 36.5mm sizing is frankly a chef's kiss from me. The only reason I don't have one of these watches in my collection yet is I know that they pop up for large discounts on WatchGecko from time to time, and I'm hoping to snipe one and save myself some money. This watch gets the recommendation of the video from me. Fantastic piece that will definitely stand out from any collection. I think this is perhaps the most refined colourway you're going to see featured on the list today. It is a light blue, but one that isn't quite as attention grabbing as some of my other suggestions, and something that's neutral enough that you could easily pull it off for everyday wear, even in a professional environment. I think the colour is really nicely complemented by the oppositional colouring of the GMT hand and print work. The best way I can describe this watch in terms of aesthetics is tastefully done. For me personally, another appeal of this model is the internal bezel, which is something I've never had in my collection before. Unlike normal internal bezels, which have two crowns at 2 and 4, this one still has a standard crown at 3 and another positioned at 10. I'm not sure if there's a right or wrong way to do this, or which I prefer if I'm honest, as I'm yet to own something like this, but I'd be curious to hear your experiences with internal bezels in the comments below. Hear me out on this one. I'm not saying this is something that everyone is going to love. I promise you though, if you spend as much time looking through watches as I do, it isn't often that something actually jumps out at you and makes you take notice. While the Malibu is, above all else, unique, it doesn't even really resemble the other watches in the same D5 Pacific range. I've always thought the level of depth that VAER managed to achieve with these models is really impressive, given the 39mm dimensions of the watch, and it's really nice to see a US brand bucking the trend of only catering to larger wrists. Also, let's be really honest here. If we're going to be grown men wearing baby blue watches, why not a little baby pink in there to match? It certainly stands out from the crowd. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really want to put the PRX on another list. I feel like I've included them once or twice already and spoke about them in my last video with the Powermatic 80 movement. Having said that, here it is again. But the focus for this video has to be the new light blue gradient dial model, lovingly dubbed the T137 407 11 35101. I'll never really understand why Tissot don't follow a proper naming policy. Other brands would have called this something like Frosted Smoke or Ocean Shallows. The advertising and marketing for the PRX have always been exceptional. Maybe it's just me, but I find the nomenclature baffling. Anyway, despite how often I meant the watch, I think it would be ridiculous not to feature this new model on the list, as it really is a stunning dial. Now, calling this light blue is obviously a stretch, but given that I'm not planning a middle ground video, because I'm not sure what I'd call it, I really wanted to feature this somewhere, as I think it's a unique and striking piece of design. When I release the dark blue version of this video, just know that all of the dials featured will be darker than this one, and treat this as an extremely questionable middle point, given this video's title. We can argue the semantics of that, but it's my video and I'm doing it. This is a limited edition watch which was designed in collaboration with Morgan, a famous British car company that is perhaps best known for making three-wheeled cars, often out of wood. While the dial and handset really stood out to me, to my mind the case reminds me of a metallic upgrade to the Marathon general purpose range. I do think the crown is a little oversized, but this isn't a very big watch to begin with. If you love the look of this, act fast though. At the time of writing there were only 5 left, and they only made 80 to begin with. You might look at this inclusion and say, hold on, I thought you said under $1,000. The problem I have is I cannot access international prices for this model, and at the current exchange rate it sits either just above or just below the threshold for the video. I feel comfortable including it anyway, as if one were available secondhand, it would definitely meet the criteria for the video. The thing is, I couldn't actually find one at the time of writing this, which I do think speaks to the quality of the watch. It might be the most expensive to feature in the video, but I have to say, I also think it's the best. The tones created by the gradient are extraordinary, and thematically you can see how well this would fit in by the pool or at the beach. Definitely not one for everyday wear, but a genuinely beautiful dial. So there we have it, my top 10 light blue watch dials available for less than $1,000. What did you think of my list? Are there models on here that you've had some experience with, ones that you think don't belong, or other models that you think I've overlooked? Let me know in the comments section below. Keep an eye out on the channel for the dark blue version of this list in the future. One thing I'd just like to add here as a little bonus section is a couple of recommendations if you like the idea of a light blue dial but want to push the boat out a little bit more. The 12 from Christopher Ward and the Aquamarine Super Seawolf from Zodiac are both great shouts just north of the price point of this video. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this.